Well, it seems that my celestial editor has decided that the previous post that I was working on was not the best one to put up. So I just talked about 10 minutes and had the whole thing wiped out. So we're going to start over with Torah portion Beshalach, which is going to run from Exodus 13, that's chapter 13, to Exodus chapter 17. The half Torah is going to be Judges chapter 4 to chapter 5. And then we'll read from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 14. Oh gosh, that's when you know. Sometimes in life, you know something special's happening when you feel that hand wipe clean what you start on. Said, well, maybe that's not the best. And I was even thinking it myself. I was like, maybe it's not the best one, coming out. And then all of a sudden, it literally disappeared right out from under me. So I do so appreciate the divine intervention when it happens. All right, so like I was saying, we're in Exodus. We've just seen the 10 plagues come to an end, and now as the 10 plagues are ending, they're journeying out into the wilderness, being led by Elohim. And of course, we asked the question, last week, why does it say Elohim is leading them as opposed to saying that they're being led by Yehovah? And I just completely my own supposition. I said, well, maybe it has to do with the appearance of many gods to the Egyptians who left with them. So in the eyes of the many Egyptians, they thought that there were many gods, so they were looking for many gods to lead them. And who knows, maybe even a lot of the Israelites may have believed in the many gods of the Egyptians simply because they'd spent so many years, hundreds and hundreds of years in captivity in Egypt. I'm going to say 400 years, though I've heard other people say it was actually like 230, but we'll just go with the standard, the standard dogma. 400 years in captivity. 400 years ago, the Jamestown colony was built in the United States, and we definitely speak a different kind of English than they did back then. We write differently, we spell words differently. Some of our words have different meanings than they did then. We have a lot larger vocabulary of new words than they did back then. For instance, words like canoe and teepee and stuff that we got directly from the Native Americans. When you look at it in those terms, it kind of helps you see that over 400 years, people can change a lot in the way that they look at the world and in the types of things that they believe. So maybe it's possible that some of these Israelites were, even believing that many gods were at work and the many gods of the Egyptians were siding with Moses or something. But that'll change because he's leading them to a place where they will have to decide what it is that they really believe, and they'll be confronted with the one who set them free. So let's read from Exodus 13:18 here. But Elohim led the people out through the way of the... he did not lead them out through the way of the land of the Philistines, although it was the nearest way. That's to say, it's the shortcut to get to the Promised Land, and that's cutting right across the top of the Sinai Peninsula, right up the coast of the Mediterranean, right into the land. But that would go right through the land of the Philistines. For Elohim said, lest peradventure the people repent when they see war and return to Egypt. That's to say that they... when they were confronted by a definitely hostile force that the Philistines would be, that they may not have been ready to to take the role of a fighter who lets Yehovah fight for them. But Elohim led the people about through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea, and the children of Israel went up harnessed out of the land of Egypt. Now just look that up. That's a chumash. That's harnessed as in got weapons on them. They're harnessed, they're strapped. They got their swords and their daggers and their bows and whatever else strapped to them, so just in case they need them, they're ready to fight their way out if they have to. And Moses, or Moshe, took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had straitly sworn the children of Israel, saying, Elohim will surely visit you, and you shall surely carry up my bones away hence with you. So he's recalling the end of the book of Genesis, when Joseph had gotten the people from Canaan, the Israelites from Canaan, or that is to say literally the 12 brothers, the 12 tribes of Israel, brought them into Egypt and settled them in the land of Goshen. And when he finally was an old man and passed away, he said, "You swear to me, all y'all swear that you're going to take my bones with you one day when the Most High God delivers you out of Egypt, because that day's coming, and when it does, I'm going with you. So you just take my bones with you." And I imagine he was probably sarcophagized, like like the way you'd see like King Tut, with the idea of him literally being a mummy, because being a very high ranking, I mean literally Pharaoh's right hand. I would definitely expect to see Joseph mummified and entombed and embalmed in the way in which of the Egyptians would have done a man of high rank. All right, so, and they took their journey through Sukkot and encamped in Etham in the edge of the wilderness. And Jehovah went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to lead the way, and by night in the pillar of fire to give them light to go by day and by night. He took away the pillar of cloud, he took not away the pillar of cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people. So that's a double blessing there, right? Because he's a glowing fire at night, which gives radiant light to the camp, so you can see what's around you. So none of the critters from the wilderness are going to come try creeping in and snatch a baby or something. You know, these, I don't know what kind of wild animals they got in the desert in Egypt, but I'm sure they've got some that are dangerous, and stay away from firelight. And also during the day they had the cloud, which means that the incredible desert heat would not have been as bad on them, because they would have been under the shade of the cloud, and he would have been literally protecting them from the heat, or you might even say from the Ra that was in the desert. Because and the reason I say that is because earlier when they're speaking with Pharaoh, Pharaoh said to him, you know, if I let you go out in the desert, there are evil men in the desert, you know, who would lay wait for you. And it says there are Ra in the desert, referring to that's the Hebrew word for evil. But Ra is also the name of the sun god in Egypt. So is he saying that the sun itself, Ra, will cook you, or is he saying that evil men are out there waiting to get you? You know, either way, at this point, he's protecting them from the Ra that's in the desert, or that Ra sun god, or whatever you want to call it. It's got a lot of interesting double meanings, and unfortunately I don't speak Hebrew, so I don't know how many triple, quadruple, and quintuple meanings it also has, you know, layered upon layer. But I will say that in the there's I don't know if I call it a debate, but in the 1800s, Darby started the modern, what is it called? The modern doctrine of rapture, which is the idea that Christ is going to return and people are going to fly up into the air, because then they'll point to, I think it's Thessalonians, it says that you'll be called up into the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, is the way it reads in the King James. And based on that translation, he decided that meant that there would be a superhero type moment and everybody would fly up into the air when Christ appeared and something would happen. That's not the way I would look at it. I think it's a reference to a new Exodus, or at least us living the same kind of life they did. Like right now you're seeing the beginning of being called into the cloud. Okay, because the cloud by day and the fire by night is the presence of the living God. That's the Shekinah of God. So if we who are believers at Christ's return begin to live with him, who is the high priest, who's there at the presence of God, then we will be dwelling in the cloud with him, because we as servants of the high priest will, and on occasion, have to go in and out of the holy place to do certain things that we are required of. You know, the high priest goes into the most holy place, but we will be required to do certain things. And I'm sure we'll be there in the midst of that Shekinah cloud, because if you recall, when the Temple of Solomon was built, they dedicated the temple, and the presence of God literally just moved in there and filled the place up with so much smoke that they had to get out of there because it was just overwhelming them. You know, and who's to say that might be what the future of the whole, you know, New Jerusalem is. You know, it might be a place, you know, so filled with smoke and light. And it says there won't be a need for the sun in the New Jerusalem, because Jehovah will be the light, and he is right now at night being the light for these people. who's to say that the New Jerusalem itself won't be so filled with His presence, that holy smoke and that radiant light, that we're just going to be in that cloud all the time. I wonder how. I hope it's not too dense. We won't be able to figure out where we're going, but I'm sure there'll be signs on the floor or something to point us the right way that we need to be heading. Along that same line, the word that's translated as air there is the word respire, or to breathe. So it could have a different meaning in the sense of, you're not going to fly up to a height, but you're going to be breathing His air or His words, because the ruach, which is ruach hakodesh, is the word in Hebrew that is translated as Holy Spirit. Ruach literally means breath, and ha is the, and kodesh is to be set apart. So it is the breath or the wind that sets people apart. And from my reading of, I believe it's Leviticus 12, might be Numbers 12, but it's the controversy that happens there is that the sister and the brother of Moses, that's Aharon or Aaron and Miriam, they are very angry at him because he's got this foreign woman for a wife, right? And yeah, she's probably a lot darker than they are, right? So she's she's much more an African dark black woman than they are. And basically, Yehovah comes down at the tabernacle and says, Miriam, Aaron, come here. Let me talk to you. Let me talk to you. And they come over to him, right? And he says, when I talk to Moses, I don't talk to Moses like I do to a prophet. I don't whisper in a dream to Moses. When I speak to Moses, I speak to him mouth to mouth. So literally, when he's breathing out, Moses is breathing it in. So he's like, when I talk to Moses, it's mouth to mouth. So how dare you? I'm putting my lips on him. How dare you call him unclean because of his woman that he's got? And then of course the perfect irony. God inflicts Miriam with leprosy, which turns her skin white. So it's kind of that. I'm speculating, but it seems like the perfect irony for a woman to complain about her brother married to a too black woman, and then God literally turns her white because she got a problem with the woman of color. So that might be something we only get these days, but I thought that was pretty funny. Anywho, that's more likely, at least in the way I read it, as a person who studies the Old Testament and reads these Torah portions, then I think that's the cloud. The cloud by day and the fire by night is the called into the cloud that you'll be. And the up into the air is not up into the air. It is to breathe in the word of God the same way that Moses did. Then we're going to get to live a life of holiness that we don't even, we can't reckon yet. But Moses knows what it's like to be right there in the cloud and breathing in the words of God as he says them to you. And of course, anybody got any questions? We are studying the Torah portion today, Beshalach, and it's Exodus 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, Judges 4 and 5, and then we're going to read from Matthew 14. If anybody's got anything they'd like to bring up, please just write a comment. I see them as I'm recording this. I can see comments when they come up. And if you know any New Testament readings that relate to this, please, write a comment. We'll read them too, because I love reading in the New Testament and seeing or Brit Hadashah, if you prefer, reading in the Brit, which some people would say is the New Covenant, or I would say it was the renewed covenant, because in Jeremiah you see the phrase, in English is translated as I'll make a new covenant with the house of Israel, not like the covenant I made with them at Sinai. But that word is the same word that renew is. It's not just, there's nothing new under the sun, right? So anything is simply renewed. It's not new, it's renewed. Or you might say he makes all things new, but he renews them in that sense. He renews them. if you look at it that way, you see that, and this is, of course, my opinion, that the covenant that was meant to be made at Sinai was a Melchizedek covenant. Right? That's the priesthood of Melchizedek. That's what's meant to have been made. Unfortunately, because of the golden calf incident, things had to be rearranged. After the golden calf, you see suddenly there's Elohim orders the building of the Ark of the Covenant. Build the Ark. Put my word inside of it, right? And then Moses writes down a bunch of stuff, puts it in the side of the Ark of the Covenant. That wasn't a part of the original plan. The original plan was you were going to be the Ark of the Covenant. He was going to write the stuff on inside of you, because you were going to be the temple of the living God. There wasn't going to have to be a tabernacle to haul him around in. He was going to be in you, dwelling in you as his people. You were going to be a royal priesthood, and that's right in Exodus. I think that's Exodus 20, though, before we're going to hit that. But he's going to say to him, I want you to be a kingdom of priests. And if you know anything about Hebrew, you know the name Melchizedek is actually just a compound word. It's Melech and Zadik, right? Melech is king and Zadik is priest, or righteous one. So he's saying, I want you to be a king and a righteous priest. I want you to be a king in the sense, the job of the king is to take responsibility for what's his, right? And to know the law. A king who doesn't know the law cannot rule and reign appropriately, because to rule something means, like, take a ruler, like you would measure things with. You take a ruler, and then you can measure properly. And you're like, oh, well, this is exactly 12 inches. So good thing I had my ruler, so I knew exactly how long it was. The laws of a nation are meant for ruling, which is to say, here's the law, let me compare it to what's happening. This is against the law. Sorry, we need to do something about that. Because a man that doesn't understand the law is incapable of running a kingdom. And a priest who does not know the law is incapable of making the appropriate sacrifice, or helping other people make the appropriate sacrifice for whatever it is that they need to make a sacrifice for. It's hard to have a friendship with God if you're not going to be willing to give him what he's asked you to give him. Because a relationship is reciprocal. And that's not to say that you're getting rewarded for making a sacrifice. You're giving him a sacrifice because you see that he's worth it. I mean, it's just, you're not doing it to get something out of him. You're doing it because he deserves it and he's worth it, and you love him and you want to give it to him because he gave it to you. I mean, there's nothing, when you start to see that there's nothing you have that he didn't give to you, it's not so hard to just give it back to him. Because you see it where it comes from, behind the scenes, with that new set of eyes that you got from him, which is those eyes that faith give to you, where you're starting to be able to see the world that he is involved in and that he is touching. And of course I'm referring to Yehovah when I say he. Let's move on to Exodus 14. Exodus 14, we're going to continue out into the wilderness here. And we're going to see Yehovah is talking now, right? So Yehovah speaks unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before Pihahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, over against Baal-Zephon. Before it shall you encamp by the sea. For Pharaoh will see the children of Israel, and he will say, They are entangled in the land. The wilderness has shut them in. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he shall follow after them. And I will be honored upon Pharaoh and upon all his host, and that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord. And they did so. So he's saying, I'm about to honor myself upon Pharaoh. In other words, he's about to do something to Pharaoh that in the eyes of everyone who witnesses what he's going to do, they're going to proclaim his glory and say, no one can do that but Yehovah. And it was told the king of Egypt that the people fled, and the heart of Pharaoh and his servants was turned against the people, and they said, Why have we done this? That we have let Israel go from serving us. And he made ready his chariot, and took his people with him. And he took 600 chosen chariots, and all the chariots of Egypt, and the captains over every one of them. And Yehovah hardened the heart of Pharaoh king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel, and the children of Israel went out with a high hand. But the Egyptians pursued after them, all the horses and chariots of the Pharaoh, and his horsemen and his army, and they overtook them encamping by the sea, beside Pi-hahiroth, before Baal-zephon. And I'm sure that these names have a very significant meaning. I just don't know what they are. They probably are relating to exactly what he's about to do. I know that a zephyr is a wind, and Baal-zephon, then, I assume, is probably the wind of Baal or something. We'll check it out in a second. And when Pharaoh drew nigh, the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians marched after them. And they were sore afraid, and the children of Israel cried out unto Jehovah, and they said unto Moses, Is it because there were no graves in Egypt, that you took us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore why do you deal with us like this? Why did you carry us out of Egypt? Is not this the word that we did tell you in Egypt, saying, Leave us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians? For it had been better for us to serve the Egyptians than we should die in this wilderness. And Moshe said unto the people, Fear not, stand still, and see the salvation of Jehovah. And by the way, the salvation of Jehovah is see the Yeshua of Jehovah, which he shall show unto you this day. For the Egyptians, who you have seen today, you shall see them again no more forever. And I'm going to verify that, since I stated that like it was fact. I'm going to pull up the Strong's Concordance and make sure that that's correct. But I am pretty sure that in Exodus 14:13, where it says, yeah, there it is. It says, see the salvation of Jehovah. It says, Ra'ah, which is with your eyes, right? Ra'ah, see. Yeshua, Jehovah. So, see the Yeshua of Jehovah, for that is your salvation. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I have gotten my honor upon Pharaoh and upon his chariots and upon his horsemen. And the angel of the angel of Elohim, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them. And the pillar of cloud went before their face and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. And it was a cloud and darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these, so that the one came near, and to the other not near to the other all night. So he's literally made a separation between the two of them with that pillar of cloud and fire. And as far as the Egyptians, they couldn't see the Israelites anymore, so it blocked their vision. But of course, it still provided light for the Israelites to do what they're going to need to do, which is cross the Red Sea. Right? And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and Jehovah caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all the night, and made the sea a dry land, and the waters divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. And the Egyptians pursued and went after them into the midst of the sea, even all of Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And it came to pass that in the morning which the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of the fire and the cloud, and he troubled the host of the Egyptians, and took off their chariot wheels, and he drove them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, Let us flee from the face of Israel, for Jehovah is fighting for them against the Egyptians. And Jehovah said to Moses, Now stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, and upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moshe stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared. And the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord withdrew. That's Jehovah, overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned, and covered the chariots and the horsemen, and all of the host of the Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. But the children of Israel looked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right and on their left. Thus Jehovah saved Israel that day out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead upon the shore. And Israel saw the great work which Jehovah did upon the Egyptians. And the people feared Jehovah, and believed Jehovah, and served Moses. Now this is across the Red Sea. You got to wonder how. And there's a particular quartermaster general of the American Army who figured this out, because his job is to handle logistics. he tried to figure out how long it would actually take 1 million people to walk across this land, because basically this thing took all night long. He said if it was a one-night event, they would have to walk across 500 abreast. That means 500 people, shoulder to shoulder, would have to walk all night long to cross this, to get it all done in one night. So it would have been literally a sight to see. Don't look at the cartoon of the Prince of Egypt and see, a couple thousand people. You're talking about 1 million plus people. That is a very organized group. In fact, when it calls them harnessed, in a Thayer's lexicon, it says that harnessed means that they're military men going out in groups of 5. That's what a harnessed group is. Okay. So let's see here. Israel saw the great work which Jehovah did upon the Egyptians, and then they feared Jehovah. They believed in Jehovah and his servant Moses. All right, let's move on to Exodus 15. And here's the song. And then Moses sang, and the children of Israel this song unto Jehovah, and they spake, saying, I will send unto Jehovah, for he hath triumphed gloriously over the horse and the rider he has thrown into the sea. Now, when we're reading this, I want you to envision that this is, they're traveling, it's almost like they're traveling up a person's body. They're starting in the lower, which is the groin, and then they're moving up all the way out of the nostrils of this body. Because if you look at the word, when it talks about the Egyptians, it says when they wanted to get the Israelites, that they lusted after the Israelites. Now, that means lust as in, it can mean sexually, but it can also mean like bloodlust, like we're desperate to see their blood spilled, We want to tear into their bodies. We want to taste and feel their flesh, that kind of lust. So that's where they started at. But as they crossed, they continued up the body all the way up. All right, so just think about that. We're reading this. The Yehovah is my strength and song. He has become my Yeshua. He is my Elohim, and I will prepare him a habitation. My father's Elohim, and I will exalt him. And Yehovah is a man of war, and Yehovah is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his host that he had cast into the sea, his chosen captains also are drowned in the Red Sea. The depths are covered in them. They sank into the bottom as it did a stone. Your right hand, O Yehovah, is become glorious in power, and your right hand, O Yehovah, hath dashed to pieces the enemy. And in the greatness of your excellency have you overthrown them that rose up against you, that sent forth your wrath, which consumed them as stubble. And by the way, he just said we're at his hands now, right? The right hand did this. Your right hand did this, so we're at the hands now. The greatness of the excellency, you have overthrown them. All right, and with a blast from your nostrils, now we're at the nose, the waters were gathered together, the floods stood upright as a heap, and the depths were congealed in the heart. There's the heart of the sea. And the enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. Here it is, Exodus 15:9. My lust shall be satisfied upon them. I will draw my sword, my hand shall destroy them. You did blow with your wind, the sea covered them, and they sank as lead in the mighty waters. Who is like you, Yehovah, among the many gods? Who is like you, glorious in holiness, fearful in praises? And I want to read you this word. Lust is nefesh. That's flesh. We've talked about this before. There's 3 words that get translated as spirit, right? One of them is nefesh. In this case, they're translating that as lust in this instance. That is Strong's word number H5315. The Hebrew Chaldee lexicon refers to that as breath or sweet odor. Here in the biblical outline, let me find Strong's definition properly. A breathing creature, an animal's vitality, used very widely in liberal, accommodating, figurative sense of bodily or mental appetites, of the beast, of the body, of breath, of the creatures, of the deadly desire, of greed, used of the lust of a man. He may, by his mind, the mortality of a man, a person, his desire for pleasure, his desire for self, the thing he wants to have, so I think, poetically speaking, that Moses is singing this song like it's a poem about moving up through the consciousness of being a person. The Egyptians are stuck down in the groin. They're stuck in their lusts, they're stuck in their manly lust, right? So they've got to move beyond that and go up into the head, into the mind. See, right? He's like, God's got his hands, with which he does his works. Now we're coming out of his nose. By the way, your nasal passages run up and down like this, and you got the ones coming straight up out of the back of your throat. So you got the possibility that he's even saying that you got to get up into your head space, up into here, these frontlets between your eyes, so that you can be a better servant of God. You got to get out of your lusts and into understanding his word, so that you can be the priest you're meant to be. Let's see where we left off. And the wind blew and covered them. Who is like you? There's none like you among the gods. You stretched out your right hand, and the earth swallowed them. You in your mercy has led forth people, which you have redeemed. You have guided them in your strength unto the holy habitation. And the people shall hear and shall be afraid. Sorrow shall take hold of the inhabitants of Palestina. Consider this too. Why does he keep talking about the right hand of God? I'm a lefty. I'm a southpaw. So why ain't he ever talking about the left hand of God? Well, because right hand is righteousness, right? Because right-handed people are typically left-brained people, which makes them very logic-oriented. That's like mathematics and logic and orderly things typically take place in the left side of the brain. It's considered the masculine side of the brain. The feminine side of the brain is the right side of the brain, which is related to creativity and doing things differently and taking a different path. That's why you never see it mentioned. There's never the left hand of God's never doing nothing, apparently. Apparently he's got only one arm. It's just the right one. But no, I mean, it's like a philosophical thing, because you got to understand, Moses spent probably 30 years, maybe a little less, as a priest in Egypt. I'm sure he cut apart many a body and embalmed many a tomb, got many a dignitary ready for mummification, burial, and when they did that, they would cut the body apart, take out the 7 major organs, put them into different phylacteries, and then they'd take the body. They'd actually dig the brain out with a metal hook, and just because they weren't sure what it was for, so they didn't keep it. They just dug all that out and got rid of it. But as you dissect human bodies and you start cutting into them and finding out the anatomy of a human, you'll find out that the left side of the brain is connected to the right side of the body. The right side of the brain is connected to the left side of the body. There's 12 nerve ganglia that run from one side and cross over to the other. Even your left and right eyes are not hooked to the brain piece that's closest to them. They send a crossover connection to the other side. As strange as it might seem, the whole thing's wired across like this instead of being wired directly straight to. So Moses probably was aware of those things as he had been a priest in Egypt. And you might say, well, how do you know he was a priest in Egypt? Well, it says he knew the mysteries of the Egyptians. And the only place you're going to learn the mysteries of a culture is in the priesthood of that culture. Because the mystery religions are the vast majority of what everything on earth is. Almost every religion except for good biblical religion is a mystery religion, which means if you're not a part of the specialized priesthood, then you cannot understand the mysteries because you are not the initiated ones. And every priesthood had its secret orders. Like, for instance, if you're going to be in the priesthood of Israel, you have to be a Levite. And if you're not a Levite, then you have to be at least sold as a slave into the tribe to begin to learn the priesthood. But it's not secret what they do, because every 7th year, under the reign of King Josiah, he ordered that every 7th year the book of Deuteronomy be read aloud so that everyone could know what was up. It allowed everybody to know that the word for truth in Greek is the word that means the opposite of covering something. If you put a cover on something, then you hide it. So the Ark of the Covenant has a cover on it, right? Because what's inside is to be hidden from the view of the layperson. So truth means to take the cover off. That's what the book of the Apocalypse or Revelation is. That's why it's a revealing, because things are being revealed that had been hidden previously. When Christ was crucified, the temple veil was torn because what had been forbidden previous to his crucifixion became available. Previously, no one was allowed into the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant was supposed to be with the Ten Commandments. But after the crucifixion, that veil was torn to state that now you are allowed into the Holy of Holies. You can be in the presence of God. You can learn to be the king and the priest that he wanted you to be from the beginning. All right, so let's continue here. So the terror of God and the sorrow that God can inflict upon his enemies is now going to be projected into Palestine, right? That's what they're saying. And remember, this is a song they're singing. Then the dukes of Edom shall be amazed. Remember, this is Esau's children. The mighty men of Moab, trembling, shall take hold of them. All of the inhabitants of Canaan will melt away. Fear and dread shall fall upon them by the greatness of your arm, and they shall be as a stone, till your people pass over. O Yehovah, till the people pass over, which you have purchased. He purchased them. Remember, you are bought with a price. If someone could look that up in the New Testament, that'd be a great reading to go along with this. You shall bring them in and plant them in the mountain of your inheritance, in the place, O Yehovah, which you have made for you to dwell in the sanctuary. Oh, I don't know if that's Yehovah. That might be Adonai, which your hands have established. I'm going to check that. And Yehovah shall reign forever and ever. For the house of Pharaoh, let's check, it says, that's Adonai. Okay, so in Exodus 15:17, it says, in your sanctuary, O Adonai, which your hands have established. So for people who think that that's just a Jewish thing to call God Adonai, it's not. Moses called Yehovah Adonai occasionally. He would say Adonai. And they shall bring them out into the mountain of your inheritance, into the place, O Lord, which you have made for them to dwell, in the sanctuary, O Yehovah, which you have established. And Yehovah shall reign forever and ever. And the horse of Pharaoh went in with his chariots and with his horsemen into the sea, and Yehovah brought again the waters of the sea upon them. But the children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea. And Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after with timbrels and with the dances. And Miriam answered them, saying, Sing you unto Yehovah, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and his rider has been thrown into the sea. So Moses brought Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. And when they then came to Marah, they could not drink of the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Before the name of it was called Marah. Now, interestingly, this is one of those places where you need commas and stuff in English to help clarify what's being said. It says the people came to Marah, but they could not drink the waters of Marah because they were bitter. Well, is it antecedent? Is that the right word in English? What's the word that is being represented by them there? Is it saying that the waters were bitter, or that the people were bitter? Now, I asked a man that actually reads Hebrew that I was studying with one time, and he said from the actual way that the language is stated there, it was the people who were bitter. It's not the water that's bitter, it's the people that were bitter. So they could not drink of the waters, for they, the people, were bitter. And that is why the name of the place is called Marah. And by the way, Mara is the name of I think a Babylonian fertility goddess. If you want to track that one down. But yeah, she's a one of those female deities that has boobs all the way around her, because she's so fertile. She can nurse 1,000 children at once or whatever. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, "What shall we drink?" And he cried unto Jehovah, and Jehovah showed him a tree, which then he cast into the waters, and the waters were made sweet. There he made them a statute, and an ordinance, and there he proved them. And he said, If you will diligently hearken to the voice of Jehovah your Elohim, and will do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandment, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon you, which I have brought upon the Egyptians, for I am Jehovah that heals you. And they came to Elim, where were 12 wells of water, and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters. Okay, and we don't see any more problems with that particular type of bitterness. Let's see what the word tree there is. It said he showed him a tree, which he cast into the waters. So let's see what tree, etz. That sounds pretty generic. Etz. A shaft. Oh, that's interesting. A tree. In Arabic, that word means a staff, a bone, or a branch. For wood, there is commonly used in Arabic cognate form. Trees, wood, especially a wooden post or a stake. Interesting. Are we seeing references to the crucifixion again already? Even more than it being a tree, being more like a stake. A wood that's like in there. Let's see, that's tree, wood, timber, stock, plank, stalk, sticks, gallows, firewood, cedar wood. I'm going to click the primitive root word. It comes from atsa, is the primitive root word, and that means simply to make firm. So or to shut, specifically your eyes, to be hard, to be firm. He shuts his eyes to devise froward things. Moving his lips, he brings forth evil to pass. That's from the Proverbs. I wonder if he's talking about a particular type of wood, which or maybe the wood's representative of their own stiff-neckedness. It's like, throw that in the water, and then they can drink it. Because they're being stiff-necked. Who knows? They might have came to that water and said, "Oh, that water looks yucky. I don't want that. I wanted my Egyptian water. I could drink right out of the Nile, and it was flowing." And who knows? I don't know. But like I said, from the person who actually spoke Hebrew that I talked to, they said that the thing that was bitter was not the water; it was the people, based on just the grammatical way that it was phrased in Hebrew. All right, let's go to Exodus 16. So they've been camped now at the wells. All right, and then they took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came into the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after their departing out of the land of Egypt. So they departed on Passover, right? Or Pascha? So it's been, is he saying that it's been 2 months, or that they're in the 2nd month of the 15th day? Which would be easy to know because the moon would be full overhead, right? And the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the children said unto them, Would to Elohim we have died at the hands of Jehovah in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For you have brought us forth into a wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. So they're hungry and they're complaining about it. Then said Jehovah unto Moshe, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether they walk in my law or not. So he said, I'm going to rain down this manna, right, because that's the bread that's going to come raining down, to test them to see if they'll do what I tell them to do. It shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they shall bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they had gathered daily. And Moshe and Aaron said unto all the children of Israel at even, Then you shall know that Jehovah had brought you out of the land of Egypt. And in the morning you shall see the glory of Jehovah, for that he heard your murmurings against Jehovah. And what are we, that ye should murmur against us? And Moses said, This shall be, when Jehovah shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full, for that the Jehovah heareth your murmurings, which you have murmured against him. And what are you? Your murmurings are not against us, but against Jehovah. It's like he's saying, y'all need to be complaining to me. I'm not running this. This is Jehovah's show. I'm just the guy he keeps talking through, right? And then Moses, Jehovah talks to Moses. Moses talks to Aaron. Aaron talks to the people. Which is unfortunately probably a justification for the Catholic Church, or even other modern inclinations of the church, which is to say, you talk to the priest talks to the bishop, bishop talks to the archbishop talks to the cardinal will talk to the pope will talk to God. You don't need to talk to God. That's above your pay grade, in that sense. But it's true, that is the way they look at it, but I'm not Catholic, obviously. So Moshe said unto Aaron and to the congregation of Israel, Come near to Jehovah, for he has heard your murmurings. And it came to pass, as Aharon spoke unto the whole congregation of the children of Israel, that they looked towards the wilderness, and behold, the glory of Jehovah appeared in the cloud. And Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. Speak unto them, saying, At even you shall eat flesh, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am Jehovah your Elohim. And it came to pass that at the evening the quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay around and about the host. And when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as the hoarfrost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, It is manna, for they wist not what it was. So in other words, manna means, what is it? They're saying it's manna. That means we don't know what it is. And Moshe said unto them, This is the bread which Jehovah hath given you to eat. This is the thing which Jehovah has commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man according to the number of your persons. Take each and every man from that which are in his tents. They're saying, collect an omer for each man, right? That's the amount you can get. And the children of Israel did so, and gathered. Some gathered more, some gathered less. And when they did meet, that means measure it out. And when they measured it out with an omer, he that had gathered much had nothing more, and he that had gathered little didn't lack any. And they gathered every man according to his eating. And Moses said, Let no man leave it till the morning. Notwithstanding, they didn't hearken to Moses. They didn't listen to what Moses said. But some of them left it. And there were some of them like, look, I'm a saver. I save mine for tomorrow, because I don't know if I'm gonna be getting fed tomorrow. So I'm gonna go ahead and save a little, put it aside, and I'll eat some tomorrow. Even though Moses said, don't do that. Trust God. He'll feed you every day. Remember, this is another perfect add-on would be Yeshua saying, you'll get your daily bread. The birds of the air don't worry about where they're going to find food at, and the flowers in the field don't worry about what they're going to be dressed in. He fed the people in the wilderness on bread every day. He never let them go hungry. And even when they were worried they might go hungry, he wouldn't even let them worry about it. He would destroy what they kept. And they gathered it, and they did not listen to Moses, but some of them left it out until morning, and the bread, it bred worms, and it stank. And Moses was wroth with them. He's like, what is that stinking in the camp? Why did you leave it out? I told you not to. And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating. When the sun waxed hot, it melted. So the stuff did melt. In other words, saying you got to go out in the morning and get it, because when the sun's getting higher up in the sky, it's going to melt. So you need to get it in the morning. And it came to pass that on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, that is 2 omers for one man. And all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said unto them, This is what Yehovah has said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto Yehovah. Bake that which you will bake today, and seethe that which you will seethe, and that which remains over lay up for you to be kept until the morning. And they laid it up till the morning, and just as Moses had said, and it did not stink, neither were there any worms in it. And Moses said, Eat that today, for today is the Sabbath unto Yehovah. Today you shall not find it in the field. 6 days shall you gather it, but on the 7th, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the 7th day for to gather, and they found none. Ooh, trying to go out there and work on the Sabbath. And Yehovah said to Moses, How long will you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? See, for that Yehovah hath given you the Sabbath, therefore he giveth you the 6th day the bread that is for 2 days. Abide you every man in your place, and let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. So, this is where people will get the commandment you're not allowed to leave. And the Jews, Orthodox Jews, they extend this, of course, because you got to make exceptions, right? The idea is that you may not leave the Jewish community on Shabbat, right? You can go to the synagogue and study, and you can leave your house, but you cannot leave. And even back in Palestine or in Judea, when Christ was there, and yes, I'm using that generic term, I'm sorry, when Yeshua was there, they had barriers or signs set up that said you are leaving the area. And I think they do it in modern Israel too, actually. I think they got some of them signs up saying you are leaving the area, and I forgot what the word is that they use for the area that they live in, which if a Pharisee saw you do, he'd say you were violating the Sabbath because you traveled too far. I mean, I think the actual distance you were allowed to travel was 2 stadia, which is like, I think maybe half a mile or something like that you could walk. So needless to say, you need to have everything within about half a mile. And if you live in a city, you probably do have everything within half a mile in your community, your at least the synagogue, right? So, excuse me. So he says, so this is where people get the idea you cannot leave your house, because it says let no man leave. But I would like to point out that this is a reaction to people leaving to look for the food on the Sabbath that they were not supposed to go look for. So, maybe this is a temporary provision to say, just stay in your tents. Don't even come outside, and we'll work from there. We'll build from that foundation. So let no man go out of his place on the Sabbath day. So the people rested on the Sabbath day. And the house of Israel called the name thereof manna. And it was like coriander seed, and it was white, and it tastes like wafers made with honey. So when they actually baked the stuff into bread, it tasted like it had honey in it. And Moses said, This is the thing which Yehovah commands. Fill an omer of it to keep for generations, that they may see the bread therein, that I have fed you in the wilderness, and when I have brought you forth from the land of Egypt. And Moses said unto Aaron, Take a pot, and put an omer of manna therein, and lay it before the Lord to be kept for generations. And Yehovah spoke unto Moses, as Aaron laid it up, for a testimony to be kept. And the children of Israel did eat manna for 40 years, until they came into the land inhabited. They did eat manna until they came to the borders of the land of Canaan. Now an omer is a 10th part of an ephah, so it gives you the actual measurement there at the bottom. Now, I don't know if from the timeline, he's like when it first fell, is he saying now gather it up and keep it, because they kept that omer in the Ark of the Covenant. And some would say, well, they kept it in front of the Ark of the Covenant because his throne was the Ark of the Covenant. And some would say they kept Aaron's staff in it. Some would say in Solomon's temple, Aaron's staff was laid in front of it, in front of the Ark. Needless to say, at this point, there's no Ark. There's no Ark of the Covenant. So I don't know if at this point he'd even said they needed to keep the stuff, because who knows, if there hadn't been a golden calf problem, maybe today we'd be eating manna. I don't know. So Exodus 17. And all the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin after their journeys according to the commandment of Jehovah, and pitched in Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. Wherefore the people did chide with Moses, and said, Give us water that we may drink. And Moshe said unto them, Why do you chide with me? Why do you tempt Jehovah? And the people thirsted there for water, and the people murmured against Moses, and said, Wherefore is it that you have brought us out of the land of Egypt to kill us and our children and our cattle now with thirst? Remember, 2 chapters previously, it was that he was trying to kill them by starving them to death. And then the manna began to fall, right? So apparently, the fact that they're getting manna every day is not good enough to demonstrate to them that I'm sure they could get water. And by the way, that same quartermaster general that charted how long it would take 1 million people to walk across the Red Sea, again, 500 abreast to get across it in one night. He charted that the amount of food it would take to feed those people and the manna would be like, I think he said like 150 train cars full per day, or maybe it was 150 trains full per day. I can't. You can look it up on Google. But needless to say, it was multiple trains full of train cars full of bread grain to feed these people every day, and them to actually allow them also to eat quail, because hey, they got to eat quail at night. They got meat at night. So it's multiple trains full of train cars of of quail to get to eat that. All right, so Moses cries out to Jehovah, saying, What shall I do with these people? They be almost ready to stone me. And Jehovah said unto Moshe, Go on out before the people, and take with you the elders of Israel, and take your rod, wherefore that you had smote the river. Take it in your hand, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there upon the rock in Horeb, and you will smite the rock, and there shall come water out of it, that the people may drink. And Moshe did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because the chiding of the children of Israel, and because they tempted Jehovah, saying, Is Jehovah among us or not? In other words, like, is your God here with us, or is God here with us, or what? Because we're thirsty. Then came Amalek and fought with Israel at Rephidim. All right, so let's don't go to that just yet. So this rock, for it to have poured out water, it would have had to pour out enough water to fill up like a small lake, to actually give not only the people, but the animals with the people water. So there is a stone that has been found in Saudi Arabia, and unfortunately you can't get to it now because it's been blocked off to tourists and such. But Ron Wyatt took pictures of it when he was in Saudi Arabia, and he said that is the stone which was struck that from which the water ushered out. And it's a real interesting looking stone, and there is water washout erosion under the stone, and it looks like this big old boulder that's been cleaved in half somehow. And like I said, it looks like water poured out of it at some point and filled in a very large basin that actually would have contained the water, about the size of a lake, some small lake of some sort. So maybe there is archaeological evidence to support what we're reading here. Then came Amalek, and he fought with the children of Israel in Rephidim. And Moshe said unto Joshua, Choose out men, and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand, the rod of Elohim in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses had said, and he fought with Amalek, and Moses and Aaron and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And it came to pass, when Moshe held up his hand, that Israel prevailed, and when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were very heavy. In other words, you remember, this is an 80-year-old man. He's trying to hold up this staff. So they took up a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon. And Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands. the one on the one side and the one on the other side, and his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua discomfited Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. And that's to say, he beat them with the edge of the sword. And Jehovah said to Moses, "Write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it into the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven." And Moshe built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nisi. For he said, "Because Jehovah hath sworn that the Jehovah will have war with Amalek from generation to generation." And some people say that Haman from Purim, the book of Esther, is Amalek's descendant. And some people even said that Hitler is one of Amalek's descendants, and that continuously God is stomping them out until finally they're gone. But they keep, it's almost like they're tasked with the task of attacking and destroying the people of Israel. I mean, they're the first ones to come against them. I mean, Pharaoh and his army, he literally said, he said, "I'm going to send Pharaoh and his army after you, just so I can prove a point about what I can do to those who I want to do something to." He's like, "I'm doing that just to show off." He didn't give them no heads up on this one. I mean, he didn't say, "Oh, Amalek's coming. I'm sending Amalek against you and harden their hearts so they want to kill you." He didn't say any of that. That almost looks like they came on their own will to come and destroy Israel. And maybe so. And we also don't see Jehovah coming down out the cloud and striking them with lightning or something, or burning them up with his holy fire. Joshua had to go out and fight. Joshua had to go take up sword and get out there and fight. Now, we could say there's a lesson that'll preach in here, which is, of course, that Moses was set upon the stone, which we might say was Yeshua, or set upon the law, right? We haven't seen the tables of stone written yet, but set upon the firm foundation, which is obedience to God. And then on each side of him were the men who cared enough for him to help him, which is Aaron, his brother, and Hur. Let's see who Hur is. Let's see what his name means. Hur. So I'm assuming that Aaron was probably on his right hand, because there's righteousness, right? So let's read about Hur. Hur. That's a Hey. Hey and Vav and Resh. Hur. His name means a hole. What a weird name. A hole. This is the Hebrew Chaldean. A hole, as that of a viper, used of an abominable subterranean prison. This is this man's name, right? A Midianite king of the husband of Miriam. So that's Moses' brother-in-law. On what authority does this description of him rest? Exodus 17:10, 24:14, 1 Chronicles 2:19. So that's Miriam's husband, and his name is a viper's pit. Now it's interesting because if you know anything about the constellations or the Mazzaroth, the overcomer is Ophiuchus, and Ophiuchus is holding the serpents in his hand, right? Which is the snake staff, right? On one side, let's see, he's standing on Scorpio, which is the enemy, right? That's striking him in the foot. And I'll have to look. I don't even know if I got Stellarium on this computer. Yeah, I do got Stellarium. But that could be a very astronomical reference to. Give me 1 second. I got to remember how to use this program. Got to get rid of all the background. Highlight the constellations, which are, there we go, there's Ophiuchus. So let's see. Let's see if I can flip the camera around so you can see it. And there it is. That's Ophiuchus holding the serpent. Let's see, on his right we have see, there's a man above him. I'm not sure who that is. That's Botes on the right. See who we've got on the left. Sagittarius over there. A shield. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what that might be a reference to, if it's a reference to that at all. I did a little research one time where I just started reading in Genesis and just setting it to the pattern that's in the heavens, which is the Maseroth, and I did a presentation called the Torah in the heavens, which literally would say that the order of what's in the heavens actually is what the order of the stuff in the Torah is as it occurs. You can actually see the pattern repeated over and over again, which is the idea that the heavens declare the glory of Yehovah. So it's no surprise that the heaven that he created, that he stretched out like a tent, is the way it says it, over our heads, and he put therein the stars for signs and for seasons, which is for the Moedim and for his oath, or his markings, or his insignias he puts in the sky. Because when the tribes came out, they were all carrying an insignia which spoke for who they were. Like I think Dan was a snake, and Ephraim, I'd have to look them all up. Like I know Judah was a lion, and several of them correspond directly with astrological signs, which are just the clusters of stars in the heavens, which would have meant a lot to people back then. They don't mean nothing to people now. People don't even bother looking up when they walk outside now. People live in cities, can't even see the stars. They don't even know what they look like. I live out in the middle of the country, and I grew up where I could walk outside at midnight, and the ground was almost lit with the brightness of the stars outside. I've seen pictures from the Midwest, out in the desert of the Midwest of America, where, literally the ground is glowing because of the light of the stars overhead. It's so bright. And unfortunately, people nowadays just don't know anything about it. So they've written a memorial. Moses created an altar, and this is where we get Jehovah Nisi from. If you ever heard that in the church, Yehovah Nisi. So Yehovah is my protector. Yehovah is victorious. And that concludes the reading from the actual Torah. Now, the way the Torah readings are set up is typically they have 7 people in the congregation that'll get up, they'll trade out. They'll each read a part of it, and it's a big deal to be able to get up and read from the Torah portion. Number one, it's only allowed for adults. Sometimes when a boy has a bar mitzvah or something, they'll bring him up there and let him read to demonstrate that he has learned Hebrew, because you got to remember that Torah scroll doesn't have jots and tittles. Well, I guess jot and a tittle, I guess, is the difference between a bet and a vet. It does have that, but it doesn't have I forgot. It's a tikkun? No, whatever the word is for the vowel markings, the vowel points and stuff that are in like the Masoretic text. That's not going to be in the Torah scroll you see in the synagogue. The Torah scroll there is not going to have vowel markings. You're just going to have to know how to pronounce what the words are that you're reading and what they mean. And that comes from a more scholarly study of the language, which means that even just from the context of what you're reading, you'll be able to understand what you're reading without having to have the particular vowel points in there to tell you how to pronounce it properly. You just have to know how to pronounce it already. And I've actually seen that firsthand at the conservative synagogue right down the road from me, about 30 minutes down the road. I was allowed to help with unrolling the Torah scroll and look at it. And I didn't see any vowel point markings or anything like that. They had some the little crowns on some of the letters, but I don't think that has to do with the pronunciation of the words. And if anybody knows better, please correct me. I don't mind at all. Always willing to grow. All right, let's move on to Judges. We're in the book of Judges 4 now. So this is the part. This is after Ehud. Ehud was the left-handed man who killed the fat ruler. I don't know if you know the story, but he basically, there was I can't remember which people he was the ruler of. It may have been the Amalekites for all I know, but he was a fat man, I can tell you that. And Ehud, as judge of Israel, went to give him a special gift. And he went and said, may we recline in your bedroom together so that I can give you this special gift. Well, doesn't that sound suspicious? And apparently this fat ruler of this enemy people was more than willing to take a man into his bedroom to get a special gift from him. So Ehud basically, since he was left-handed, nobody ever checks for left-handed people, right? He had a dagger hid that he could get with his left hand. And the man invited him in. Ehud just took that dagger, shoved it all the way up inside of him, and just let it go in him. And the man was so fat, the fat just literally closed the hole up with a dagger inside of him. And Ehud killed him and fled, laid him down in his bed, locked the door, told people he was asleep, and took off running and went back to Israel. And he assassinated the ruler of the people that were over Israel at the time. So Ehud now has passed. And unfortunately, even though the children of Israel have been set free, they're back to their old tricks again, back to doing the wrong thing. So Judges 4. And the children of Israel again did evil in the sight of Jehovah when Ehud was dead. And Jehovah sold them into the hand of Jabin, the king of Canaan, that reigned in Hazor, and the captain of whose host was Sisera, which dwelt in Harosheth of the Gentiles. And the children of Israel cried unto Jehovah, for he had 900 chariots of iron. 20 years he mightily oppressed the children of Israel. And Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lebadoth, she judged Israel at that time. And she dwelt under the palm tree of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in Mount Ephraim. And the children of Israel came to judgment before her. Now this is interesting, because you don't usually see a woman in a position of power in the ancient world in general, and not in Israel. And people will sometimes say, well, what about the prophetess Deborah? Well, why was she in charge? Well, that's a good question. Now, as soon as it tells you that Deborah was ruling, it also gives you the name, let me see if I can see it. And yes, the name of her husband. Immediately it says, Deborah, a prophetess, the wife of Lebadoth. She judged Israel at the time. Now, and I can't even help but wonder, is this, because you got to understand, the children of Israel have been sold into the hand of King Jabin of Canaan. So did King Jabin actually appoint Deborah, a woman, as the judge of Israel? I mean, did he go and say, let's see, who's somebody that's harmless? Who's somebody ain't going to be able to do nothing to stand up against me? Find me a woman and make her the ruler of Israel. Give me a woman to rule over these Israelites. Which in his mind may have been a joke. But don't get me wrong, you're going to see some very pro-woman writing here coming up. By the way, Ehud was left-handed. Well, you see people bad-mouthing left-handed people in the ancient world too, and yet Ehud rescued the people. He was left-handed. Deborah is a woman, right? Traditionally not powerful, traditionally not allowed in positions of rulership, right? And yet she's going to lay down the law, and you're going to see the victory given to a woman. It's not Deborah, but you'll see a victory given to a woman. Then you'll see Israel's judge is the son of a whore. He's the son of a prostitute who basically his dad got a prostitute pregnant, and he was born, and the dad took him into the house. And then when his brothers, who were born of a normal marriage, basically were like, we want you gone because you're nothing but a whore's son, and you ain't gonna get no inheritance here in our family. And and he did. He left, and I guess his dad got rid of him, but he left, and he became a mercenary, and he was traveling all around Israel fighting as a mercenary company with his group of thugs he probably put together. And when Israel needed help, boy, they came and found that thug, that group. They found that whore's son and said, come and protect us with your mercenary company. He's like, I'm not going to do nothing for you. You ran me out. Or are you going to admit that I'm a legitimate heir, et cetera, et cetera? And they're like, sure. Yeah, okay. It's all right that you're a whore's son. Just come and defeat our enemies. And he was one of the judges too. We're not going to read about him today, but it's interesting when you read the books of the Judges, because if you realize how these people are weirdos of the time period, again, a left-handed man, a woman, the son of a whore, these guys who, and then of course you got Samson, who's just this womanizing madman who spends his whole time, having sex with Philistines. Every Philistine woman he has hand on, he just lives with the Philistines. The Israelites don't even want him living with them because he's too dangerous. They're just like, go and live with the Philistines, and they sit him down there. And there's one time, I think, when they had bound him up or something, and he's like, well, are you trying to kill me or something? Because I'm Judge Israel. They're like, no, we just want you to go with the Philistines and get out of here, because you're too rowdy to keep around here. So anyways, it's interesting when you read the books of the Judges of how strange some of these judges seem to be. All right, so the children of Israel cried out because they were oppressed. Deborah was the judge, right? And we want, how did she get to be judge? Again, maybe Jabin appointed a woman a judge because she wouldn't be a threat to him, or so he thought. So go and, let's see. She sent and called on Barak. Yes, like the former president. The son of Abinoam, out of Kadesh Naphtali. So he's out of the tribe of Naphtali, right? And said unto him, hath not Jehovah, the Elohim of Israel, commanded, saying, go and draw towards Mount Tabor, and take with you 10,000 men of the children of Naphtali, and of the children of Zebulun. So she's actually saying it like, didn't I already tell you? I already told you that's what God said do. And I will draw unto you to the river Kishon Sisera, the captain of Jabin's army with his chariots and his multitude, and I will deliver him into your hands. So she's like, look, I already told you God said, take 10,000 men, go up to Mount Tabor, wait by the river, and I'll bring them out to you, and you can take them. It won't be a problem. So Barak said to her, if you will go with me, then I will go. But if you will not go with me, then I will not go. So that almost sounds like he's saying to her, yeah, I'm not just going to believe whatever some woman says God said do. So if you'll put your life on the line and come out there too, I'll go then. She said, I will surely go with you, notwithstanding the journey that you shall take shall not be for your honor. For Jehovah shall sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. And Deborah arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. And the funny thing was, when she said that, Barak was probably thinking, oh no, is Deborah going to be leading the army now or something? Is she going to be taking my spot? And Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh, and he went up with 10,000 men at his feet, and Deborah went with him. Now Heber the Kenite, which was of the children of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses, had severed himself from the Kenites and pitched his tent in the plain of Zamanim, which is by Kadesh. So the Kenites actually in Jewish tradition ended up being some of the greatest scholars of the Torah that there were. There's a particular guy who has a ministry that says that everything's the fault of the Kenites. I'm not going to go into that. But the Jewish tradition is the Kenites were some of the greatest scholars of the Torah that there were. And this man's wife is about to become famous. All right, and they showed Sisera that Barak, the son of Abinoam, was gone up to Mount Tabor. So this guy saw the Israelite army moving, went and told and said, hey, the Israelites are moving. You guys might want to do something about that. And so the captain of Tabin's army came out to meet him, right? And Sisera gathered all of his chariots, even the 900 chariots of iron, and all the people that were with him from Harosheth of the Gentiles into the river of Kishon. And Deborah said to Barak, up, for this is the day in which Jehovah has delivered Sisera into your hand. Is not Jehovah gone out before you? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor with the 10,000 men after him. And Jehovah discomforted Sisera and all of his chariots and all of his host with the edge of the sword before Barak, so that Sisera alighted down from his chariot and fled away on his feet. So they're winning the battle. Absolutely. They're defeating this, 900 iron chariot strong, army of horsemen with 10,000 footmen. And but the leader of the army has got away. He has snuck off. He took off running and got out. But Barak pursued after his chariots and after the host unto Harosheth the Gentiles, and all the host of Sisera fell upon the edge of the sword until there was not a man left. So Barak got out there and chased down them chariots and killed all those men, because you can only imagine they're taking them chariots for themselves. That spoils of war, right? These high-tech iron chariots. So they killed every man and took the chariots. Might not even noticed that Sisera wasn't even among them. Or sorry, I'm saying Sisera. Sisera wasn't even among them, because he had snuck away when the battle wasn't going in his favor. So Sisera fled away on his feet to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, for there was peace between Jabin the king of Hazor and the house of Heber the Kenite, which is why Heber went and told him that the Israelites were moving, because he was informing his ally that his ally's minion, or his ally's subjects, were revolting against him, right? And so Jael went to meet Sisera and said unto him, Turn in, my lord, turn in to me, fear not. And when he had turned into her into the tent, she covered him with a mantle. And he said unto her, Give me, I pray you, a little water to drink, for I am thirsty. And she opened a bottle of milk, and gave him milk, and covered him. Again said unto her, Stand in the door of the tent, and it shall be, when any man doth come and inquire of you, and say, Is there any man in here with you? That you will say, No, there is no man in here with me. Then Jael, Eber's wife, took a nail of the tent, and took a hammer in her hand, and went softly unto him, and smote the nail into his temples, and fastened it into the ground. For he was fast asleep, and so he died. And behold, as Barak pursued Sisera, Jael came out to meet him, and said unto him, Come in, and I will show you the man whom you seek. And when he came into her, and into the tent, behold, Sisera lay dead, and the nail was in his temples. So Elohim subdued on that day Jabin the king of Canaan before the children of Israel, and the hand of Israel prospered and prevailed against Jabin the king of Canaan until they had destroyed Jabin the king of Canaan. So Jael is the woman to whom the victory was given. So basically, Deborah's like, I already told you what God said do. Barak's like, I'm not going to do what a woman tells me unless you're willing to put your life on the line too. She's like, I'll certainly put my life on the line, because I know God spoke to me. And she did. And they rode out, went to war. Sisera got away right into Jael's tent. And Jael, who never stepped out of her tent. This is a woman who did nothing unladylike. This is a woman who she didn't go and get out swords and shields and a bow and go run down and fight. She didn't do any of that. She was taking care of her house, taking care of the tent in which she lived. And this man came to that tent, and she was courteous to him. She gave him the normal amount of hospitality you would expect. And when he went to sleep, she killed him. And I can only imagine it is because she, like several other women in the Bible, saw what was coming and was going to keep her husband from making the wrong decision. Because I'm assuming Jael knew that if Sisera was running to their house to hide in it, it's because his whole army was defeated and he was trying not to get killed. So if she was found to be harboring this fugitive from the Israelites, I'm sure the Israelites would have just killed her and her husband and took the whole tent with them. They'd have just been one more piece of the spoil of war they took. But because she met him out and said, hey, the guy you've been looking for, I killed him for you. Yeah, I don't like him either. And when she did that, that would have allowed her family to have a peace deal with Israel. Because, and again, this is a pro-woman thing. Deborah, whose husband is named, who was probably appointed by Jabin to be over Israel, gives a clear and precise message from the creator of the universe on what a man needs to do to take care of a problem, and that man refuses to do what he's supposed to, and then she has to directly get involved in it before he'll do what he's supposed to. Same way we see Yael taking the initiative to keep her family and her home safe by doing the right thing, which is to kill the man that it certainly would not have been smart for them to have protected, because there was certainly nothing he could offer him anymore, even though her husband was in a peace deal with that man's master. So I'm not exactly sure how that relates to to what we read in the Torah, except that I don't know, is there a plague in there or something? Or I guess it's the idea maybe that God's leading them and doing the I get it, because God's fighting for them. That's the idea. Yehovah is out there handling business with Sisera's force. He said he's the one. It even says Yehovah put him to the edge of the sword. It wasn't even Barak with his 10,000 men apparently didn't have to do much. So continue reading is into Judges 5. So let us read through Judges 5 all the way to 31. So pretty much all the way through Judges 5. And then sing. Here we go. They're going to sing a song, which is just like Moses sang a song, right? So here sang Deborah and Barak, the son of Abinoam, on this day. Praise you, Yehovah, for avenging Israel, when the people willingly offered themselves. Hear, O kings, give ear, O you princes. I, even I, will sing unto Yehovah. I will sing praise to Yehovah, Elohim of Israel. Yehovah, when you wentest out of Seir, when you marched down to the field of Edom, the earth trembled and the heavens dropped. The clouds also dropped their water. The mountains melted from before Yehovah, even that Sinai from before Yehovah, Elohim of Israel. In the days of Shamgar, son of Anath, in the days of Yael, the highways were unoccupied, and the travelers walked through byways. This is similar to some of the writings of Homer. It was said that Ulysses had said, "Let it be known that I lived in the days of Hector, the trainer of horses, and that I lived in the days of Achilles, the warrior." You know, because they're singing a song to remember what has happened. And the people, like right now, it's Barak singing a song about Yael. Barak's got to sing a song about this woman who took care of business because he didn't get in there and do what he was supposed to do. So let's see here. In the days of Shamgar, the son of Anath, in the days of Yael, the highways were unoccupied, and the travelers walked through byways. The inhabitants of the villages ceased. They ceased in Israel until that I, Deborah, arose, and that I arose a mother in Israel. So Barak's happened to sing Deborah's praises too, that I arose a mother in Israel. They chose new gods. Then was war in the gates. Was there a shield or a spear seen among 40,000 in Israel? My heart is toward the governors of Israel that offered themselves willingly unto the people. Bless you, Yehovah. Speak, you that ride on white asses, ye that sit in judgment and walk by the way. They that are delivered from the noise of archers in the places of drawing water. There shall they rehearse the righteous acts of Yehovah, even the righteous acts towards the inhabitants of the villages in Israel. Then shall the people of Yehovah go down to the gates. Awake, awake, Deborah. Awake, awake, and utter the song. Arise, Barak. Oh, he's getting a piece of the action. Lead your captivity captive, O you son of Abinoam. Then he made him that remained have dominion over the nobles of the people, and Yehovah made me have dominion over the mighty. Out of Ephraim there was a root of them against Amalek. After you, Benjamin, among your people, out of Mechar came down governors, and out of Zebulun they that handle the pen of the writer. And the princes of Issachar were with Deborah, even Issachar, and also Barak. He was sent on foot into the valley for the divisions of Reuben. There were great thoughts of the heart. Why abode you among the sheepfold, to hear the bleating of the flocks? For the divisions of Reuben there were great searchings of the heart. Gilead abode beyond the Jordan. Why did Dan remain in ships? Asher continue on the seashore, and abode in his breaches. Zebulun and Naphtali were a people that jeopardized their lives unto death in the high places of the field, because those are the tribes that went out under Barak to actually do the fighting. So he's saying, where were the other tribes? Why weren't all 12 tribes there? Well, thankfully, Zebulun and Naphtali took up the cause and lifted the banner and did what Jehovah had said. The kings came and fought the kings of Canaan and Tanakh. From the waters of Megiddo they took no gain of money. They fought from heaven. The stars in their courses fought against Sisera. So he's saying the heaven itself fought against Sisera. The river Kishon swept them away. The ancient river, the river Kishon, my soul, you have trodden down strength. Then were their horse hooves broken by the means of prancing, the prancing of their mighty ones. Curse you, Meroz, said the angel of Jehovah, curse you bitterly the inhabitants thereof, because they came not to the help of Jehovah, against the mighty. Blessed above women shall Yael, the wife of Heber, be, the Canaanite be. Blessed shall she be above women in the tent. He asked water, and she gave him milk. She brought him butter in a lordly dish. She put her hand to the nail, and her right hand to the workman's hammer, and with the hammer she smote Sisera. She smote off his head. She had him pierced and stricken through the temples. Her feet he bowed, he fell, he lay down. At her feet he bowed, he fell. Where he bowed, there he fell down dead. The mother of Sisera looked out of a window and cried through the lattice, why is his chariot so long in coming? Why tarry the wheels of his chariot? Her wise ladies answered, yes. She returned and answered to herself, does he not have speed? Has he not divided the prey, to every man a damsel or two? To Sisera a prey of diverse colors? A prey of diverse colors of needlework, on both sides, meat for the necks of them that take the spoil. So let all your enemies perish, O Jehovah, but let them that love him be as the sun when he goes forth in his might. And the land had rest for 40 years. So for 40 years they did right after this. So I guess that's why we have it as the Haftorah portion, because of course there's a song. There's also the mention of a river consuming the enemies of Jehovah. I'm not exactly sure where this river is at in modern day Israel. Keshon is what it says? I'm not sure. But we see Yael mentioned twice. I mean, she's at the beginning and at the end of this poem. Barak's one place in the middle. Deborah gets the second mention. Barak's kind of stuck in the middle with just one little mention. And the tribes of Zebulun and Naphtali are lifted up for doing what Jehovah had commanded. It's interesting. But that is the Song of Deborah. If ever you were looking for it, that's in Judges 5. And the Deborah story is 4 and 5. I mean, it's not really Deborah's story. If anything, it's the story of Deborah, Barak, and Yael. And you don't even see Yael's husband mentioned at any time except he warns the enemy of Israel. And then the next thing you know, his wife is assisting Israel. Which, again, there's that idea of the woman in the house having the wisdom to make a right decision even though she's in the house. She's still got more wisdom than her husband who's out of the house. Take, for instance, Rebecca. Rebecca made sure that Esau wasn't given the inheritance and that Jacob was. Because when the children were in her womb, the man of God spoke to her and said, there are two nations within your womb, and the older will serve the younger. And that was it. And then, decades later, Daddy's dying and it's time to get the inheritance out. And she hasn't forgotten what was said to her. And she made sure that God's will, or Jehovah's will, as had been proclaimed to her when they were in the womb, is what happened. Even though her husband wanted to give it to Esau because he liked Esau. He probably thought that Esau would be a much better man to take over the family business. Esau was a tough, strong warrior. I mean, he was the kind of man that he's a man's man. His brother was all about staying in the tents and learning stuff. So he's like, I don't want a nerd running this place. I need a jock running this place. I need somebody who can get in another man's face and push him over if he needs to. You know, I don't need a pushover. But needless to say, Mama knew best, because Yehovah knew best and told Mama the right thing to do. All right, let's read through Matthew 17. Let's see, Matthew 14, 22 to 33. And straightway Yeshua constrained his disciples to get into the ship and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitude away. And when he had sent the multitude away, he went up into the mountain apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the middle of the sea, tossed with waves, for the wind was contrary. And it was the fourth watch of the night, and when Yeshua went out unto them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, Is it a spirit? And they cried out with fear. But straightway Yeshua spoke to them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I. Be not afraid. And Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it is you, bid me to come unto you on the water. And he said, Come. And when Peter was come out of the ship, he walked on the water to Yeshua. But when he saw the wind and its boisterousness, he was afraid, and he began to sink, and he cried, saying, Lord, please save me. Immediately Yeshua stretched forth his hand, and caught him, and said unto him, Why did you have little faith? Why did you doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. And when they were in the ship, came, and they worshipped him, saying, Of a truth, you are the Son of Elohim. So once they saw him walking out there, walking on the water, it was like, well, that's pretty miraculous. Don't think we need to dispute any claim of a connection to divinity there, huh? Let's see what these words mean. Let's see, worshipped. Let's see what worshipped is in Greek, because our New Testament text is usually taken from the Greek received text. So worship there is proskeneo. I probably mispronounced it. I'll let the machine pronounce it for me. Proskuneo. That's what the pronunciation key says. Proskuneo. To kiss the hand, a token of reverence. Among the Orientals, especially the Persians, it means to fall on your knees and touch the ground of your forehead.
Strong's G, 4352. Proskuneo. Proskuneo.
Proskuneo, okay. It took a while for that to come on. So proskuneo, it means to kiss the hand, or you could go down to your knees and touch your forehead. Typically it's thought of as kneeling in a prostate in the New Testament, in a prostate way, in homage or supplication. It's used of the homage shown to men of a superior rank. Like, for instance, any man would show the high priest this type of respect. And of course Yeshua is a high priest, so of course they're showing him that respect. In Thayer's lexicon, let's see, to prostrate oneself, to kiss the hand, to fall upon the knees and touch the ground with your forehead. In Strong's Concordance, it says it's a probable derivative of a word meaning to kiss, like a dog licking his master's hand, to fawn, to crouch to, prostrate oneself in homage. So they're not worshiping like, you are God. They're worshiping him like, you are of such higher caliber than we are. You know, so, you know, be careful when you see a word, look up its definition. Don't assume you know what they meant just because you think you know what an English word means. And I'm not really sure why they picked that one to be in connection with what we read today either. But But I'm a big fan of Yeshua, so if anybody has any comments about why that might be chosen, please let me know, because I love to talk about the New Testament. I love to talk about the things that Yeshua did. I don't know, maybe walk. I've heard the comparison of him walking on the water to being a comparison of when the ark was carried across the water. That it wasn't actually them carrying it, it was carrying the people that were ferrying it across the water. I've heard that. Beyond that, I'm not really sure why they picked that particular, except maybe the idea of a person losing faith, and because they lost their faith, or their hand went down in the way, maybe that's what it meant. You know, Moses physically is an example of a person who has faith. He's physically holding something up, and over time, he's physically losing his will to continue because of the pain of his muscles and stuff. And sometimes you need the people around you to lift you up and to boost your faith, to bolster you, in the same way that Yeshua reached down and immediately grabbed Peter. You know, he didn't sit there and let him drown. He didn't sit there and say, "Well, you know, you'll learn your lesson when you learn how to swim." No, he reached down and grabbed Peter and lifted him up and said, "You know, why did you lose your faith? What caused you to stumble, man? I mean, I'm doing it." He's right, but he never abandoned him. He never walked away from him. Maybe that's the idea, is that the people that love you, really care about you, are not going to abandon you when you have a problem of your faith, or you know, you go through a struggle or whatever. Maybe that's why they chose this particular one, because we're thinking about Moses again holding his hands up so that they could overcome the enemy. You know, I certainly don't know. I'm not the master of much of anything, but I'm a husband and a father, and I love Yeshua, and I thank everybody for joining me on exploring the Torah portion today, and I hope that we'll all be able to move forward and see more and more amazing things. And thank you so much. I'm shutting this one down, and again, this was Torah portion Beshalach. And that is Exodus 13 through 17, Judges 4 through 5, and Matthew 14. Praise Yehovah, and blessings to everyone who seeks to be a part of his kingdom. Amen.